At first glance, people-pleasing may seem like kindness. You say yes to help others, you try to be agreeable, and you avoid conflict because it feels easier. You become the reliable one, the nice one, the one who's always there. But underneath that behavior is often something deeper, a fear of rejection, a desire to be liked, or an internal belief that your value comes from how useful you are to others. The truth is, when you constantly shift to gain approval, you're not being kind, you're abandoning yourself. You silence your own voice to avoid disappointing others. You override your intuition to meet someone else's needs. You put their comfort above your own truth, not once, not twice, but habitually, until it becomes your identity. Self-abandonment is subtle. It happens when you laugh at a joke that hurts you just so others won't feel awkward. It happens when you go to events you dread just to avoid saying no. It happens when you stay silent in rooms where you should speak up because you don't want to be judged. Each of these moments chips away at your self, respect your boundaries, and your sense of self. You begin to forget what you even want because you're so used to molding yourself around what everyone else expects. Your yes no longer comes from a place of alignment. It comes from fear of not being good enough, fear of being excluded, fear of disappointing someone you care about. And over time, that fear becomes your guide, replacing your own inner compass. Your actions become performative. Your relationships become conditional. You're no longer seen for who you are. You're only seen for who you pretend to be. And deep down, that creates emotional exhaustion, resentment, and loneliness because no one truly knows you, not even you. You've given so much of yourself away in pursuit of being liked that now you don't know how to take yourself back. The habit is ingrained. People are used to the version of you that always bends, and the idea of disappointing them feels like a betrayal, even when it's the only way to stay true to yourself. So you keep shrinking, you keep smiling, you keep sacrificing, not because you want to, but because you don't know how to stop. Because you've confused approval with love and people-pleasing with purpose. Because you were taught that being good means putting others first, even when it costs you everything. Confidence isn't about being the loudest in the room, the most admired, or the most followed on social media. It's not about how many people clap for you or how often others validate you. Real confidence, the kind that lasts, the kind that holds you steady in moments of fear, comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are and choosing to stand in that truth, even when it's uncomfortable, unpopular, or misunderstood. When you live authentically, you stop outsourcing your identity. You stop editing yourself to fit into other people's boxes. You stop looking sideways, comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. Instead, you begin to honor your own values, your voice, and your inner compass. That's where confidence begins, not in perfection, but in integrity. Because when your actions, your words, and your beliefs all line up, you feel grounded. You don't have to remember what version of yourself you showed to which person. You don't walk around afraid of being found out. Because you're not hiding anything, you're not pretending. You're not performing. And that creates a powerful sense of safety within yourself, a knowing that no matter what happens, you've got your own back. Authenticity gives you a kind of quiet strength. You become less reactive to criticism because your worth is no longer attached to other people's opinions. You stop needing to be the smartest, the prettiest, the funniest, or the most agreeable. You're okay just being you, messy, flawed, evolving you. And when you're okay with that, you stop fearing rejection because you're no longer trying to be what others want. You're committed to being real. It also changes how you show up in relationships, in work, and in the world. You speak with more clarity because your words come from a place of conviction rather than confusion. You make decisions faster because you're not constantly second guessing whether someone else will approve. You take risks, not because you're fearless, but because you're rooted in something deeper than fear, your truth. And even when you stumble or fall, that confidence doesn't vanish, because it wasn't built on applause. It was built on self-respect. It was built on knowing that you're not here to live someone else's version of success. You're here to be whole, not perfect. And being whole requires you to be honest about what you feel, what you want, and who you are. One of the greatest traps we fall into is believing that if we just act a certain way, if we say the right things, dress the right way, hold back our opinions, play it safe, we can get people to like us, approve of us, or think highly of us. But the truth is, no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to control what others think about you. People will judge you based on their own values, insecurities, experiences, and biases, most of which have absolutely nothing to do with you. You could spend your entire life walking on eggshells, trying to be liked, and still find yourself criticized. You could be quiet and be labeled weak. You could speak up and be called aggressive. You could be successful and be accused of arrogance. You could be struggling and be seen as lazy. No matter what you do, someone somewhere will have something negative to say, and chasing their approval is like trying to hit a moving target. You never truly arrive. This constant attempt to control perception drains your energy. It forces you into a state of hyper-awareness where you're always calculating your words, second, guessing your actions, and molding yourself into a version you think will be more accepted. But what's the cost of that? You lose your spontaneity, you lose your authenticity, you lose your peace. And ironically, even when you do everything right, it still might not be enough, because people aren't always reacting to you. They're reacting to their own wounds, fears, projections, and beliefs. Someone might dislike you because you remind them of someone who hurt them. Someone might judge you because they envy your freedom. Someone might reject you simply because your presence challenges the narrative they've created about themselves. The point is, it's not about you. It never really was. Trying to manage how others perceive you is not only impossible, it's also a form of self-betrayal. You start altering your behavior to meet imaginary standards, and slowly, you lose the ability to trust your own instincts. You become so consumed with being liked that you forget how to be real. And in the process, you sacrifice your authenticity for a sense of safety that never truly exists. There is no way to live a full, free, and meaningful life while constantly trying to control how others see you. Their opinions are theirs to carry, not yours to manage. Your job is not to be perfect in everyone's eyes. Your job is to be true in your own. We live in a world where being agreeable is often mistaken for being good. From a young age, many of us are taught to be polite, not to rock the boat, and to put others before ourselves. We're rewarded for being easygoing, for not complaining, for going along with plans, even when we don't want to. So when it comes time to say no, to draw a line, to set a boundary, it can feel wrong. It can feel like we're being difficult, selfish, or rude, but saying no is not cruelty. It is not coldness. It is not rejection. Saying no is one of the purest forms of self-respect. When you say no, you are honoring your time, your values, your energy, and your truth. You're acknowledging that you are not here to be everything for everyone. You're recognizing your limits, not as weaknesses, but as boundaries that protect what matters most. A clear no is far more respectful than a forced yes, because when you agree to things you don't truly want, you're not showing up with integrity, you're showing up with resentment. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to something that could restore you. Every time you agree to someone else's agenda out of guilt or fear, you're putting your own needs on the back burner. You're teaching yourself that your comfort doesn't matter, that your voice doesn't matter, that your feelings must always come last. And over time, that message becomes embedded in your identity, You begin to believe that your worth is tied to your ability to serve others, to accommodate, to never disappoint. And that belief is what keeps you stuck, burned out, bitter, and disconnected from your own life. The more you ignore your inner no, the quieter your truth becomes, until one day you wake up feeling completely detached from what you want because you've spent so long living for what everyone else wants. Learning to say no is not easy, especially when you've been conditioned to believe that your value comes from being agreeable. The first few times, it may feel terrifying. People may push back. Some may guilt you. Others may drift away. But what you begin to realize is that your no doesn't just protect your peace. It clarifies your priorities. It helps reveal who truly respects you and who only values your compliance. Saying no is not about being defensive or closed off. It's about knowing your worth deeply enough to stop trading your peace for approval. It's about drawing a line and saying, this is what I need to feel safe, balanced, and whole. And in doing so, you begin to show up in your life with more clarity, more purpose, and more power. When you spend your life pretending, performing, or pleasing, the connections you form are built on illusions. People are drawn to the version of you that you've curated, not the real you, but the version you believe is most acceptable, most likable, most palatable to others. And as a result, even if you're surrounded by people, you still feel alone because no one truly knows you. Not your desires, not your wounds, not your truth. That's the tragedy of inauthentic living. It places you at the center of relationships where you're constantly showing up as a role, not as a person. You laugh when you don't feel like laughing. You agree when you're burning inside. You comfort others while neglecting your own pain. You begin to play the part so well that even you forget where the performance ends and where you begin. But the moment you begin living authentically, truly, unapologetically, you change everything. You start showing up in your life without a mask. You start speaking your truth, setting boundaries, expressing your needs, and honoring your feelings. And that changes the energy you bring into the world. It shifts the kind of people you attract and the kind of relationships you build. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. You stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment. The connections that grow from that place are deeper, stronger, and more meaningful because they're rooted in truth, not performance. You begin to attract people who are not interested in your perfection, but in your honesty. People who value your boundaries, who celebrate your uniqueness, who stand beside you as you are, not as who you pretend to be. Authentic relationships don't require you to shrink, to fake a smile, or to carry the emotional weight for both people. They allow you to breathe, to be messy, to be vulnerable. In these relationships, love is not something you earn through self-sacrifice. It's something that flows freely because both people are seen, heard, and accepted. There's no need to decode mixed signals or pretend you're okay when you're not. Instead, there's space for real conversations, mutual respect, and emotional safety. But not everyone will accept the real you, and that's part of the process. When you begin living in truth, some relationships will fall away, and that can feel painful, even lonely at times. But what you must remember is this: when someone walks away from your truth, they were never aligned with your soul to begin with. Letting go of those who only loved the masked version of you is not a loss. It's a clearing. It creates space for something far more real. Authentic living acts as a filter. It gently removes what doesn't serve your growth, your peace, or your evolution. And in its place, it draws in people who are drawn to your light, not your performance. People who aren't afraid of your voice, your emotions, or your truth. So many of us walk through life with a quiet, unspoken belief that we are only as valuable as we are approved of, that somehow our worth is measured by the praise we receive, the compliments we collect, the validation we get from others. We learn, often unconsciously, to tie our self-esteem to how well we fit into other people's expectations, how liked we are, how needed, how agreeable, how impressive. But here's the truth: self-worth is not something that's given to you by others. It's something you must claim for yourself. The moment you base your value on the opinions of those around you, you make your identity fragile. You hand over the keys to your self-worth to the world, and every time someone disapproves of you, disagrees with you, or criticizes you, you start to shrink. You question your worthiness. You begin to bend and twist yourself into whatever shape will make people like you again. And in doing so, you betray yourself over and over again. That kind of living is exhausting. It's a never-ending performance where the applause is inconsistent and fleeting. Even when you do get approval, it never fully satisfies, because deep down, you know it wasn't really you who was being accepted. It was the version of you that you created to be accepted. And so the cycle continues. You do more, give more, smile more, agree more, just to feel like you're enough. But the bar keeps moving. The emptiness doesn't go away. And the fear of losing approval becomes a constant background noise. True self-worth, however, is rooted in something far more stable. It comes from recognizing that your value is not up for debate, that you are worthy, not because of what you achieve or how well you fit in or how many people approve of you, but simply because you exist, because you are a human being with a heart, with experiences, with dreams, with a voice that matters. You don't have to earn your place in the world. You don't need to convince people to see your value in order for it to be real. You can stop waiting for the world to tell you that you're enough and start telling yourself that every day. In every choice you make, in every boundary you set, in every truth you speak, even when it shakes your voice, your worth is constant. It doesn't increase when someone praises you, and it doesn't decrease when someone criticizes you. It doesn't disappear when someone rejects you, and it doesn't skyrocket when someone admires you. It simply is. The problem is never whether you're worthy. The problem is whether you believe you are. And believing in your worth is not arrogance. It's not ego. It's not pride. It's wholeness. It's healing. It's finally choosing to stop negotiating your value with people who don't have the capacity to see you clearly. It's the quiet, powerful decision to stop begging for a seat at tables that don't respect your presence. We often think of freedom as something external, a change in our environment, a new opportunity, a break from obligations, a moment of escape. But the deepest, most lasting form of freedom doesn't come from what changes around you. It comes from what changes within you. And at the heart of that inner freedom is one powerful, radical act: self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is not passive. It's not about giving up or settling for less. It's not about ignoring your flaws or pretending your pain doesn't exist. Self-acceptance is courageous. It's standing in front of the mirror, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and saying, I am enough exactly as I am right now, in this moment, with all my scars, struggles, gifts, and contradictions. That kind of acceptance doesn't happen overnight, because from an early age, we're conditioned to believe that we need to change ourselves in order to be worthy of love. We are told directly or indirectly that we must be more this or less that, more quiet, less emotional, more driven, less sensitive. So we begin editing ourselves. We hide the parts that don't fit the mold. We carry shame for simply being who we are. And the more we chase perfection, the more we drift away from our truth. But freedom begins the moment you stop fighting yourself. When you stop apologizing for your feelings, when you stop trying to squeeze into roles that suffocate you, when you stop believing that your imperfections make you unlovable. Self-acceptance is the beginning of peace, because it silences the internal war that's been raging for far too long. It's in that space of acceptance where you start to breathe again. You stop needing permission to exist. You stop trying to prove yourself in rooms where your value is constantly questioned. You stop shrinking, editing, comparing. You begin to honor every version of yourself, the strong parts, the struggling parts, the healing parts. You begin to see yourself not as broken, but as whole and evolving. And this internal shift begins to ripple outward. When you accept yourself, your relationships change. You stop tolerating treatment that undermines your dignity. You stop clinging to connections that require you to betray your truth. You stop needing everyone to like you because you finally like you. That's real power. That's real freedom. Self-acceptance gives you the courage to live unfiltered, to speak from the heart, to show up fully. It means you're no longer waiting for external validation to feel good about yourself. You become your own home, your own safe space, your own source of belonging,